After my husband sent people to trample every single flower at my little stall outside the university gates, I picked up a blazing bouquet of red roses and marched straight into the graduation ceremony of that so-called poor student. On stage, my husband, Professor Liu, wore his usual gentle expression as he bent down to place the graduation cap on her head, even pausing to pose for a warm commemorative photo. And at that exact moment, I switched on the tiny speaker I had brought along. My voice, calm yet carrying through the hall, declared, "One man, two wives, teacher and student, sharing the same bed, red roses for 3 coins each today. Consider it my wedding gift to the happy couple." Gasps rippled through the crowd of students, their eyes wide with confusion. The man who had always acted so composed and dignified suddenly faltered, his face draining of color as the façade he had built so carefully crumbled in an instant. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Hebe Audio for more great stories every day. That Friday, I found out my husband was cheating. It had been an ordinary day. Luke Lam Suyen came home after his research group meeting, only to collapse from a sudden stomach attack. His clothes reeked of spicy hot pot. He had always suffered from gastritis, and for years had never touched spicy food. When I contacted his teaching assistant, I learned there was a new student in the group that day. To please her, he had gone to eat Chongqing hot pot. I kept my voice calm as I reminded her, "It's fine. Professor Luke has a weak stomach. Next time, don't invite him to that kind of food again." She hesitated, then stammered, honestly, Tham On On didn't even meet the requirements to join the group." A chill went through me, like a time bomb had just started ticking. Meanwhile, Luke Lam Suyen was lying on the bed, brows furrowed in pain. After so many years together, unlocking his phone was easy. At first, the group chat looked normal, until I saw the messages. "Luke Lam Suyen, next time in the meeting, don't fall asleep. Tham On On, I was just bored. Maybe I should just look at you next time? If I'm looking at you, I won't feel sleepy. Luke Lam Suyen, Tham On On, teacher, sounds too old. From now on, can I call you Little Luke? Or Brother Luke? Luke Lam Suyen, as you like. Tham On On, Chu Mi. Heart emoji.jpg. I checked the profile picture. It was her. The breath caught in my chest, bitter and suffocating. When night fell, he stirred awake. I handed him a cup of hot water, and placed his glowing phone with the chat still open right before him. Even then, her messages kept popping up. "Little Luke, let's eat hot pot again tomorrow? Little Luke, I can't write my thesis. Will you do it for me? I'll even let you be second author." She was only an undergrad, with no right to be in his graduate research team. I spoke plainly. Let her go. She knows nothing and only drags everyone down. I can act as if none of this happened. 20 years of marriage, and I was still trying to save his dignity. His eyes stayed on the phone, narrowing coldly. Then he said, "Nan Kai, if I hadn't married you, you'd still be nothing more than a flower seller." I had never imagined that after 20 years, what he'd throw back at me would be words that cruel. I had always been the patient, dutiful wife. But the next day, I changed. I tied my hair neatly, pushed my flower cart to the front gates of Tondat University. With every bouquet, I slipped in a printed copy of that conversation. Professors and students knew me well. I'd been around campus for years. Soon enough, students gathered. Why are you here selling flowers today? Did something happen with Professor Luke? I smiled gently, bitterly, handing them roses. Nothing much. Your professor just has another family to take care of. That's all. Then, deliberately sharper. Young girls are greedy, they want everything. I just hope your professor can handle it. By the next day, rumors spread like wildfire. Professor Luke and his student. When I returned with my cart again, thugs stormed over, stomping every flower into the dirt. "Lady, someone sent us with a message. Know your place and stop." But I didn't stop. I wept in the guard's office, went to the principal, and even dialed the mayor's hotline. By nightfall, Luke Lam Suyen had been summoned for a talk. That evening, he crept home early, no longer daring to linger. "Nan Kai, that's enough." I laughed, voice sharp as ice. "Enough? This is only the beginning. You can commit the filth. But you're afraid when I expose it? He sighed heavily, tossing his briefcase on the sofa. Frustration etched between his brows. "Non-Kai, if you hadn't made a scene, this could have been settled quietly. If our marriage truly ends, it will only be because you brought it upon yourself." So now I was the one to blame? For tearing apart the mask of this filthy marriage? He was the one who betrayed 20 years. And yet he donned the robe of morality, painting me as hysterical, unstable, the woman who destroyed her own family. "Did I force you to cheat, Luke Lam Suyen?" He sneered, voice like a blade. "Non-Kai, have you forgotten? You were the one who brought Tham On On into this house." My heart stopped. Nausea rose, crashing like waves inside me. That name, Tham On On. The girl I had once taken in, raised, and sponsored. The child I had treated as my own for nearly a decade. Luke Lam Suyen, you truly disgust me. For the first time, when our eyes met, we were strangers. That night, he left with his luggage, and the one at his side was her. Later, I sat smiling as I watched him on stage, the chaos of the graduation ceremony still simmering. I had promised he would never know peace again. The disruption, the scandal, the cameras snapping, the students' phones raised, it all landed squarely on us. He dragged me into the faculty lounge. Non-Kai, the panic in his eyes had already vanished, replaced with his usual calm, controlled demeanor. "Do you even know what today is? What are you trying to do?" Of course I knew. The graduation ceremony coincided with Tondat's centennial celebration. Politicians, business magnates, alumni of influence had all returned. And above all, there was one man who could decide whether Luke Lam Suyen would claim the vice president's chair, academician Chung. And my bond with Chung began with nothing more than a single bouquet of roses. Years ago, on Shishi night, he had been so engrossed in research he forgot his wife. They quarreled. Madame Chung stormed off and ended up at my flower stall. Over one last bouquet of roses. They argued bitterly until I handed it to her with a small white lie. "This is the bouquet your husband reserved especially for you." Her anger melted, his softened too. From then on, they came often. When a drunkard once wrecked my stall, the first person to shield me was none other than Luke Lam Suyen. He wasn't much of a fighter, and quickly ended up injured, but he stayed to help me pick up the pieces. That night, Chung himself arrived to buy flowers, and found in Luke Lam Suyen a kindred spirit. A young scholar with ideas that resonated across a generation. He took him in as a disciple, and from then on, the task of buying flowers for Madame Chung fell to Luke Lam Suyen. At first once a week, then more, until one day it was every day. Roses for her, violets for me, the flowers I loved most. By the time he graduated and was kept on as faculty, he brought a brilliant bouquet with him as he knelt down to propose. Everything had seemed so natural, so destined. I stayed home, wrote novels to make a living. He only then realized I too was from the literature faculty. Selling flowers had been my side trade. But the writing world was ruthless. I couldn't survive on it alone. The flowers remained, but the man had changed. Looking back, perhaps the greatest tragedy of this life was simply that I had married the wrong man. But starting over, it was not too late. Non-Kai, I'll give you one chance. Go out there and explain yourself. Anger flashed across Luke Lam Suyen's brow. But all I could do was laugh at the absurdity. In this marriage he betrayed. I was supposed to be the one who lost my temper, who begged and wept, because I refused to grovel and chose revenge to free myself. Suddenly I was the one accused of making a scene? I looked up and smiled coldly. What do you want me to say? That the girl I raised betrayed me? That my husband slept with the foster daughter he also took as his student? Dim light caught his face. 20 years together seemed to mean nothing to him. Non-Kai, stop this, he muttered, words I'd heard 1,000 times that now sounded hollow. I could clearly see his cruelty. My daughter in spirit in his bed. Their betrayal a blade driven deep. Luke Lam Suyen, you have no right to say that to me. I laughed and then cried, choking, and in that mad moment I tore at his academic robe to reveal the shirt Tham On On had bragged about giving to her boyfriend. Proof they'd been colluding. I won't let you live in peace. And as for Tham On On, she won't get to keep what I gave her. I'm not the kind of woman who silently endures humiliation. I screamed, voice raw but clear, I will ruin your reputation. I will send her back where she belongs. I will make her parents and everyone know the ungrateful girl slept with her foster father. Panic flickered in his eyes. He gripped my wrists so hard I thought he might crush the bones. Nan Kai, what have you done? Pain made sweat bead on my brow. But I only smiled, a warped grin of someone who'd lost every limit. What could I do? I want her dead. Shouts erupted outside. Luke Lam Suyen paled and bolted away. On the graduation stage, a middle-aged woman shrieked, spitting curses like flame. Witch. A vixen who lures men. Slaps followed. Tham On On's face swelled. She staggered. The mother's fury froze the guards. No one dared intervene. Her gown was ripped, exposing the exact lingerie she'd sent Luke Lam Suyen photos of days before. What are you all standing for? Pull them out, a guard barked. The guards rushed in, but the mother let go. Satisfied, when our eyes met I nodded slightly and felt a small, cold relief. One slap might not count as severe injury, but in front of hundreds the label, homewrecker, would stick to Tham On On, and her shining future would be locked shut. I felt lighter. Luke Lam Suyen clutched On On to him, his eyes like ice as he glared at me. Nan Kai. You've gone too far. I curled my lip. Too far? She dared to be a mistress, why shouldn't she take a slap? He tried to drag her away. Carry her off. Then, don't expect ever to wash away this sin. He hesitated, voice hoarse. Isn't this what you wanted? To prove I was unfaithful? To prove I and On On were real? Now you have your proof. I said, and he left. The hall erupting into chaos, students dispersed slowly, leaving eyes fixed on me, pity, astonishment, accusation all mixed together. The spectacle I staged yielded nothing but a purge of anger. The price was seeing him leave with her. A public confirmation that he chose her over me. My marriage shredded before everyone. In the scuffle the mother wasn't blameless. Scratches marked her face but she bent and smiled obsequiously. Voice full of sycophancy. Madam Luke. The thing you asked is done. About my son's studies. I nodded calmly. Rest assured. I will keep my promise. Her youngest is only in middle school. On On is not her biological child but the product of a murky affair between her husband and a widowed woman, abandoned. Humiliated. Starved of love. I met the girl at 10 when I was helping poor students. She knelt before me begging to go to school with such desperate longing I saw my younger self in her. I pulled her out of the workshop. Sponsored her. And even after learning she'd once slept in a pigsty I took her in and raised her. For more than 10 years we were as close as blood. I could have forgiven Luke Lam Suyen for a fling with someone else. But I could never accept the child I raised climbing into my husband's bed. Especially after reading their lewd messages and watching her strut up to me in a provocative outfit to taunt. Nan Kai. You raised me but all the money comes from little Luke. Her contempt stung. She mocked me. Look at you. Pitiful. I feel sorry for little Luke. Slap. I couldn't stop myself. She ran crying to Luke Lam Suyen. I stood there with the sting on my hand and a strange, guilty satisfaction. Only when they could not live in peace did my heart find respite. I had once rescued her from the abyss. Now I would be the one to send her back there, fair. I thought. Luke Lam Suyen spent days in the hospital while he tended to On On. A few days later her younger brother called. Sobbing. Aunt Nan, we have no one else. Please help my mother. From his broken words I pieced together the rest. Under Luke Lam Suyen's manipulation. After On On reported to the police, the medical report was downgraded to minor injury, enough to detain and fine Madam Tham. This morning she'd been taken away. And Luke's people left a note. If she names who's behind it, she may be spared. The boy hiccuped. My mother says, she will never betray you. Aunt. I soothed him, promising, she will be all right. Trust me. Clearly the attack on Madam Tham was a warning. My plan had only just begun. Sure enough, not long after, his call came. I've spoken with the university. This afternoon you'll attend a press conference and clear everything up. If a psychiatric evaluation is needed, I can arrange that for you. It was obvious, the school had already chosen to shield him. I let out a cold laugh. And if I refuse to play along? Through clenched teeth, he warned. Nan Kai, don't push me. I don't want this to escalate to the point where there's no saving face. No way back. No way back? I laughed until tears stung my eyes. That was what he still dared to call keeping the peace. In the end, I agreed. On the way, I scrolled the news. The truth behind Ton Dat professor's alleged affair. Jealous wife fabricates story? Desperate wife kneels publicly to beg forgiveness. Just to keep her place? Foster daughter or punching bag? Leaked claims of years of abuse by professor's wife. The press hall was packed wall to wall. Flashing cameras, microphones shoved in my face. Madam Luke, did you abuse the girl you raised? Do you see every woman near Professor Luke as a threat? Is it true you'll kneel and serve tea today, as the professor promised? I smirked. Kneel? Then make sure your cameras are ready. Don't blame me if I kneel too quickly for you to catch the shot. I slipped past the crowd into the lounge. There he was, gently offering water to Tham On On. At the sight of me, she instinctively nestled closer into his arms. Madam Luke, Tiu Luke only thought I was thirsty. That's all. Don't misunderstand. There's nothing between us. She coughed delicately for effect. I arched a brow. By all means, continue. Since you're holding her that tight, I suggest you try mouth to mouth. It's more hygienic. Her eyes reddened, lips trembling. I respect you for raising me, but my principles won't allow you to smear me like this. My feelings for the professor are pure. Nan Kai, focus. He cut in, setting the cup aside and dragging me toward the conference table. Tham On On seized the microphone, playing the picture-perfect wounded ingenue, Shimu. I've never forgotten your kindness. Yet you slander me and Professor Luke. If you won't kneel and serve tea today, I'll pursue this to the end. A steaming cup was set before me. Crack, the cup went flying with my slap, scalding heat splashing her face. She shrieked, clutching her cheek, the facade of innocence shattering in an instant. I flicked my wrist and tossed down a stack of photos, the very ones she'd once sent me herself. Provocative. Intimate poses with Luke Lam Suyen. Since you want a hammer, I'll hand you a mallet. Reporters went wild, cameras clicking furiously. He fumbled, one arm shielding her, the other trying to gather the photos. Completely rattled, Nan Kai, he roared, trembling with rage. I ignored him, turning to a nearby journalist. Did you catch me slapping her? Startled, he nodded. I smiled. Send me a copy. A scene this delightful deserves to go viral. Later, it was only because academician Chung intervened that we sat down again. To him, our marriage had once been a prideful story, born from the bouquets I used to sell. Nurtured under his own patronage of Luke Lam Suyen. For years, he'd carried the man in his palm, and he hated to see things unravel. Tiu Luke, for my sake, let the matter of the student end here. Live in peace. Silent, Luke Lam Suyen tilted back his glass, drained it, then slammed it down without an ounce of respect. I appreciate your guidance, but my success isn't built on you alone. You know my ability. Your health isn't what it was. It's best you don't meddle further. Chung trembled with fury, and my husband stormed off after receiving yet another simpering voice message from On On. She was hungry. She wanted him to cook for her. He abandoned everything to run back to her. Chung sat pale, fists shaking. Tiu Nan, that bastard. Without me, he'd be nothing today. I soothed him. It's all right. I don't value him anymore. It was a long while before he calmed, sighing. It was my mistake then, misjudging him. But I stayed silent, because the first to misjudge him had been me. I was the one who stopped him that day. The one who introduced him to Chung. The one who placed him on this path. Tiu Nan, he urged. Divorce him. I still have some influence. Let me shield you. No one will dare speak against you. I shook my head. No, I won't divorce him. He trembled with rage. Why be so foolish? What about him is worth binding yourself for life? I pressed my lips together. I can't divorce him. I won't let them live in peace. If I did, I'd never swallow this for the rest of my life. My eyes were blades as I spat each word. I want Luke Lam Suyen ruined. That night, he strolled home as if nothing had happened, bringing Tham On On with him. She's hurt. She needs care. The dorm isn't convenient, so I've decided to let her stay in your room. I hurled a porcelain vase. It shattered against his face, shards slicing a bloody gash across his cheek. Over On On's scream, I stepped forward. This is my house. You expect me to surrender my room to your mistress? She rushed to his side. Tears brimming. Was it worth this over a room? I've already said, until you divorce. I don't want to enter this house. If you hadn't spread those photos, if you hadn't made a scene at school, I wouldn't be shunned by everyone. The righteousness of youth always burned so bright. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and smiled thinly. Damn own. Being a mistress isn't as easy as you thought. From the day you climbed into his bed, you should have known the price. And today is only the beginning. Her face flushed, eyes glistening as she put on her fragile act. About to cry. Enough, Luke Lam Suyen growled, stepping in front of her like a shield. This mess is no one else's fault. Nan Kai, it's you who's changed. How laughable. He had the affair, yet he still wanted to dump all the blame on me? I laughed coldly. Changed? How have I changed, Luke Lam Suyen? Because I'm no longer the obedient, docile wife you could command? Because I'm no longer young enough to give you that sweet illusion of youth like she does? My voice cut like a knife. You're the most disgusting kind of man, greedy and selfish. You want the thrill of your secret tryst while still keeping me at home to play the dutiful wife. The perfect cover for your filth. His face twisted with anger. Nan Kai, you've lost your mind. You're insane. Yes, insane. Ever since the day he betrayed me and tried to shove me into the role of sinner, forcing me to take the blame and torture myself with guilt. If insanity was my only weapon, then I would choose it gladly, dragging them both down into hell with me. That night, they made love openly in my living room, even with the soundproof walls. Their muffled moans pierced through and echoed in my ears. I sat before the surveillance feed, watching, listening, and made my decision. If they gifted me an 18+ performance, I would repay them with a grand show of my own. At dawn, she floated in wearing a flimsy lace dress, radiant with smug triumph. Oh dear, Sister Nan Kai, no makeup again? You look dreadful. Poor to you, Luke Thay, having to suffer you all these years. Smack. My palm left a perfect red imprint across her cheek. In my house, don't crow like a rooster at sunrise. First thing in the morning. Your voice is already an eyesore. Before she could cry, my other hand landed, symmetry achieved. Both cheeks burning red, she immediately flung herself into his arms, sobbing. To you, Luke Thay. She hit me. You have to defend me. 2 against 1. I wasn't foolish enough to linger. I turned on my heel and walked away. At the university later, his brows were furrowed again. Nan Kai, this isn't the place for your madness. I smirked. Relax. Today is your big day. Isn't it? Becoming vice president of the university. I wouldn't dare ruin it. Why, it even makes me proud. He mounted the stage, basking in triumph. I sat in the audience, bitterness gnawing me. Yet I had to admit, years ago, my eye for men hadn't been so poor, until her moans filled the hall. The smile froze on his face. On the giant screen behind him, their bodies tangled together, the most obscene parts blurred only just enough. Gasps, laughter, and whispers sliced through the hall like knives. Students filmed it, voices rose demanding they both be expelled. And Own fled in tears while officials scrambled away. Chaos erupted like a shattered hive. Through the frenzy, he found me. Nan Kai, we need to talk. In his office, he stood before the floor-to-ceiling window. When I was first appointed dean, I had this window installed, because you once said you liked open space. I turned away. And now? Does that matter anymore? He sighed. Nothing. Just, remembering. Nan Kai, stop tormenting each other. She's pregnant. Let's, divorce. Pregnant. The word hit like an axe. My scalp tingled. My whole body turned cold. I bit my lip until blood came before I managed to whisper. I won't divorce you. She became a mistress. Then she'll die a mistress. The child in her belly will never be anything more than a bastard. A shadow that can never raise its head. Rage seized me. I smashed vases, photo frames, tore papers into shreds, screaming until my throat was raw. In his dark eyes, I saw myself, an apparition dragged straight from hell. It's not over. The hospital where she gives birth. I'll make sure every doctor knows she's a homewrecker. The school where her child enrolls. I'll make sure from the first day it's branded a bastard. As long as I'm alive, they'll never know peace. Spent. I collapsed among shards of glass. He only looked down at me calmly. Non-Kai, I can file for divorce. 6 months. A year, I can wait. I'll make Thamono my wife in the eyes of all. My son will be celebrated. Admired. I have 100 ways to end this marriage. And not one of them you could bear. The last person I wanted to hurt was you. That filthy mockery of tenderness made me sick. For her, he would push every law to its edge. 30 days we wrestled. At last, I agreed to sign. The money, the house, take whatever you want. He said, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. I'll make it up to you. But you must attend the wedding. He wanted to buy off 7 years of marriage with cash. I gave one condition. Come with me to the flower market. Then I'll sign. He faltered. Did he still remember those dawns? Carrying armfuls of roses with me. Back when he was just a young man. At 3 a.m., the market was alive. Thorns pricked my skin. Blood smeared on petals. Reflexively, he lifted my finger to his lips. Non-Kai, you're still so clumsy. How will you take care of yourself? 7 years ago, it was those same words, followed by him dropping to one knee. Slipping on the diamond ring bought with his first earnings. The scene was the same. The man entirely different. Non-Kai, how did we end up here? His voice cracked. His eyes flickered with something almost human. I wiped my tears quickly. Turned my back. I'll divorce you. I'll even attend your wedding. But you'll walk away with nothing. That's the debt you owe me. I still have a life to live. As I expected, he nodded. After all, he was still Professor Luke of Tondat. My presence at the ceremony would be its own alibi. His seat as vice president secured. Money could always be earned again. The divorce was signed quietly, without fireworks. 30 days later, news of Luke Lam Suyen's grand wedding with Thamonon spread across the city like wildfire. An hour before the ceremony, I called Academician Chung. He only said, "Rest assured, the gift you prepared will land right in his hands." On the wedding day, I arrived dazzling, trailed by a procession of Thamonon's old acquaintances, her parents, relatives, childhood neighbors, every face from her past. All of them wore the exclusive uniforms she herself had once designed. Their clothes plastered with photos of her in intimate poses with ex-boyfriends. Alongside every sordid story she had left behind. They walked into the hall like the living exhibition, stripping bare the pure white flower that Luke Lam Suyen had worshipped. Whispers spread like wildfire, so the girl he adored was never pure at all. Non-Kai, you're slandering me, On sobbed, clinging to his sleeve. Tiu Luke Thay, she made all this up. I smiled and laid a folder before him, evidence that a week before announcing her pregnancy, she had spent the night in a hotel with another man. Looking him straight in the eyes, I delivered the final blow. Do you remember? Our first child was so difficult for me to conceive, because the doctor said your little swimmers were of such poor quality it was nearly impossible. And now she's suddenly pregnant? One sentence, and the entire wedding turned into a farce. But the spectacle wasn't finished. His phone rang. He answered, and his face twisted as though he'd swallowed poison. You reported me to the disciplinary committee? I chuckled. After living with him for more than a decade, I knew him better than anyone, in the swamp of ambition. He had pulled more than a few shady tricks for mutual benefit. I had long been prepared. I had completed the paperwork to make Onon legally his foster daughter. A sordid affair between father and foster child. How could Tondat University keep Professor Luke on its pedestal now? He stared at me, eyes full of hatred and fear. Non-Kai, that day at the flower market, you were just putting on a show, weren't you? If he still had an ounce of love, he might have noticed how the thorn-pierced fingers replayed the exact scene from 10 years ago. But no, he saw nothing. I never thought you'd stoop to something so filthy. I laughed. Hoarse and broken. Filthy? Then what were you, Luke Lam Suyen? I hadn't even recovered from childbirth before you crawled into her bed. When you held her, kissed her, did you ever remember our tiny child, too weak to cling to life? Did you remember your wife bleeding, breaking, losing everything? I once read their flirtatious messages with despair, yet still clung to the fool's hope of forgiveness. But women in marriage always become detectives. They always open Schrodinger's box. And inside was the truth. When I was pregnant, they were already kissing under the harbor lights. When I miscarried, They were tangled together all night in a hotel room. He hadn't suddenly rotted, he had been rotten all along. After that, Own disappeared from my sight. He never truly wanted her, selfish men like him never do. Pressured by her own mother, who took my money gladly. Own was eventually married off to a butcher, the same man who had beaten his last wife to death. I had said it before, I was the one who pulled her out of the mountains. And I would be the one to shove her back into hell. I only saw Luke Lam Suyen 3 times after. Once, thrown out of Tondat like a stray dog. The second, when I drove past him crouched on the roadside, ragged and filthy. I didn't even slow down. The third, inside the defendant's cage, while I sat calmly in the gallery. Years of corruption had caught up with him, when his allies turned coward. They dumped every crime squarely on his shoulders. Walls collapse, and everyone pushes. When the sentence was read and he was dragged away, he looked back at me, lips trembling, mouthing, "I'm sorry." Was he truly sorry? No. If I had stepped aside, let him marry Own openly, give him a child, perhaps one day he'd see her true face. But for the sake of that child, he would have forgiven her. Or else, he would have simply found another Lee Own, another Wang Own, to fill the void. He would never admit fault. In his mind, it was only that she tempted him, and I was no longer desirable. Years later, perhaps holding another young girl in the dark, he might sigh piously, "Back then, I was young, foolish, and unkind. I failed the woman who once loved me." To him, I was nothing but an anecdote, a trophy of past conquest, proof of his so-called irresistible charm. After the divorce, I still set up my flower stall sometimes. I loved flowers, loved the feeling of living a second life outside of writing. Once, a reporter came to interview me. I agreed without hesitation. Soon the papers printed the whole story of his selfishness, cowardice, and betrayal, a perfect obituary for our 7 bitter years of marriage. I never wished for him to repent at midnight. Men like him never regret the women they betray. They only mourn money and power when they're gone. What I wanted was for him to taste ruin, to spend the rest of his life crushed by despair. I closed my eyes, hearing the echo of wedding vows, before God. In sickness or health, for richer or poorer, I will love, honor, and remain faithful for life. But there was no God to witness. So I would play God instead, condemning him to poverty, sickness, and a lifetime of misery. I sent him the newspaper from my latest interview straight into the prison, where he sat by an old sewing machine. They said he once tried to kill himself with a toothbrush, botched it, and destroyed his vocal cords, losing his voice forever. The day I heard the news, I set up my flower stall as usual. The only difference was that I gave the flowers away for free. For such joyous news, of course, the whole world deserved to celebrate with me.